Hey, hello, and welcome to episode 7 of Mooncast. Today it's just me talking to you today, and I'm going to talk to you about the last few Leshavult characters that me and Tom didn't talk about in my last podcast. So I'm recording this just after the end of the Kickstarter, about 5 or 6 days later, which went really well, because obviously when I recorded with Tom, it was before the Kickstarter, or it just started, I can't remember, I think it was just before. Yeah, and it went really well. We smashed through our top stretch goal and went so far beyond it, we had to quite quickly create some more stretch goals. So that was really good. So first of all, thank you to everyone that's backed that, because that's really going to make the Leshavult come to life and really going to support Goblin King games to push Moonstone into the future. That's really good, really, really good. So I thought it'd be nice to talk about the last few Leshavult characters that we didn't talk about. So they are the Wild Things box set, which is Gloom, the Jackalope and Chubbs, Boris the Bunny Summoner, and Lubard the Giant. I'm actually going to start with Lubard the Giant, because then I'm going to talk about Fawns, which the other four all are. So Lubard is a giant, so he's got, obviously, as you kind of expect, got a lot of health and things. He's got melee 2, melee range of 3, which is pretty good, arcane 2, and evade +2, which goes in line with the other trolls and giants. I'll just run the rest of his cards. So top passive ability is called Blind Faith. This character cannot take harvest and jog actions if there's a friendly model within 4. Can only make them if there's a model within 4. +2 to impact damage, so that's quite good. He's carrying a huge sensor ball, supposed to be like incense, I think. Then Righteous Fury, which costs 3, so it costs more energy than he starts with again. So that's in line with a lot of the other Leshavult characters, so he needs support from Brother Daniel or something, or Kavanagh to get the extra energy. It's free to cast, it's just not free to cast, it costs 3 to cast, but it's an active ability rather than arcane, so we can just do it. What it means is he gains 3 energy, so it goes back up to 3, +2 melee stat and +1 melee damage, so that would get him down to melee 4, and impact damage would be +3 damage, which is pretty horrific if he can get that off. That makes him quite a beast in combat. He's then got Haul In, which is his arcane ability. It's cast on any 2, so green, blue, or red 2, 3-inch range, and you move the target 2 inches directly towards this model. So basically what that is you can move them in order to be able to do his signature move, which is Crushing Embrace. Crushing Embrace is the same as Olde has. It does 2 damage against every opposition card, which is really good. So if he's already done Righteous Fury, for example, that's a standard 5 damage against anything they play. And the end step effect is they have to discard half their energy rounding up. So it is a really, really great signature move. It's really good really good for hitting fairies with, because even if you don't kill them, they're losing a lot of energy, and against goblins, against anyone really, anyone losing energy is horrific. And he's got 14 health, and his energy tokens are on health 5 and health 1, same as most. Oh, his signature move is on thrust as well, and it does impact damage, like I said, so it does quite a lot. Now, it's hard to talk about Lubard. I've used him 3 times, I think, in games, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't used him particularly well in any of them. One of the first games I played with him was in the 3-player game that I played with Jack and Ryan, and he was killed pretty quickly because Ryan managed to cast Atrophy on him, and for some reason I stupidly called bluff, I think 3 times, and he lost about 12 health or something, which is pretty horrific. He still managed in that time to then kill Fencer, so he was good when he hit stuff. He did do a really good job. And then the second game I played with him, the third game I played with him, the second one we didn't record, but the third game I played with him, I didn't use him very well. I made the mistake of picking up a Moonstone with him early, and because he's only got 2 energy, and I had no one in the troop that could do sort of movement support, he got a bit stuck, because he could only ever move 4 inches at the most, so he was just kind of dawdling around. He couldn't get anywhere. He was playing against goblins who like to kind of stay back a little bit anyway, so I didn't get much out of him. And, to be fair, he held on to that Moonstone and he wasn't getting hit by anyone, so he kind of did what I wanted. I think I won that game, and I won it because I had more Moonstones and he was holding one of them, so I guess he did that quite well. what I can see with him is he is mainly going and hitting people. Is really his main goal. But obviously you don't want to move too far away from people. You need to stay near people. And that 3-inch melee range is really good, but he needs to be within 4 inches, otherwise he does get stuck if he can't perform jogs or harvests. He could get a bit stuck. And like most people, he needs that extra energy, so easiest one obviously Brother Daniel giving it to him, because he gets it at the beginning of the turn, and then he can do Righteous Fury straight away and immediately get that 3 energy back. That +2 melee and +1 damage is horrible. That means as the attacker he'd be melee 6, which gives him a very good chance of getting thrust off. And causing quite a lot of damage. Yeah, I like Lubard. We're working on the model at the moment. He's not been. He was chosen as the alternative sculpt, so we're looking at how we can improve that. So he's basically blind, which is why the bag's over his head. But we're working on that at the moment. I'm not going to say too much more about him because he doesn't. The rest of them are all fawns and they interact in a fawny kind of way. So I want to spend more time talking about them. And really, that's kind of. I think he's a fairly simple character. Oh, the one thing I will add is he is Commonwealth and Leshavult, so he can play for both, which is interesting. And he has the cultist keyword, so he can benefit from a couple of abilities that affect cultist. Plus, he can benefit from a couple of other, because he's a giant. So he can benefit from there's another giant coming that supports other giants around her. And he will obviously benefit from that as well, which is quite interesting. Let's move on to the rest of the fawns then. I'm going to start with the Wild Things box set and I'm going to end on Boris. So, in the Wild Things box set, you get Gloom, the Jackalope, and Chubbs. And won't talk about them in that order, because I want to talk about Chubbs first. So Chubbs is a little, almost like a cheruby kind of fawn. He hasn't got any wings or anything, but that's kind of what he looks like with a bow. He's all the fawns at the moment, all the ones I'm talking to you about today, are Commonwealth and Leshavult. I will mention 3 other fawns because I want to talk about obviously how these 4 will interact with those, because although with the Leshavult and with the new cats coming out, we'll see less of the single race troops. I think it'd still be nice to mention the other fawns. So actually, before I go on to Chubbs, I'm not going to go over the cards of the other 3 fawns, but I'm going to give a tiny little bit of background on them so that you can see how these other ones might interact with them. So you've got Jada, Hoff, and Mr. Toodle are the other ones. Jada's a soldier. She's a relatively simple soldier. She's probably a bit smaller because she's -1. She's got a bow, same as Chubbs had, that she can fire X+1 piercing. And she's got Swift, and she's quite good at finishing people off. Basically, good amount of energy, 4 energy, and she's basically quite a good hitter. Then you got Hoff, who is he's a soldier again, quite a brutal soldier, can really hurt. Got a melee of 5, a 2-inch melee range, and has ways of getting more damage. And he can support other fawns with melee and movement as well. And the last one is Mr. Toodle, who's just pretty standard cleric. He's got healing spells and supporting spells to give energy and take energy away, and etc, etc, etc. That's them. I'm going to go into more detail about them because I don't want to talk about them. I want to talk about the Leshavult ones. I don't know at the moment if Jada, Hoff, and Mr. Toodle are going to be Leshavult and Commonwealth combined, or just Commonwealth, which is what they are as I speak to you today. But that will come in time. So let's go back to those 3, Gloom, Jackalope, and Chubbs. I'll start with Chubbs. Melee 3, so not awful. Should get some defensive cards if he needs it, and if he's attacking, should be able to get some attacking cards if he needs them as well. Melee range of 1, that's fairly standard. He's not got any obvious reasons why it should be 2. Arcane 3, and Evade -1, so he is harder to hit, which is quite good. And then he's a weakling though, so -1 damage and +1 energy to harvest as well. That's his only passive ability. His active abilities are quite good. And one thing I will say actually before I go any further, again, I keep forgetting these things. One thing that's interesting about these 3 and the other fawns, if they become Leshavult, not Boris, I'll get to Boris later, they don't have the abilities that are more expensive than their energy allowance to start with. So, which most of the Leshavult do have at least one ability that costs more than their starting energy. These ones don't. So they can be quite useful in that way that they don't rely on as much on activation order. So Chubbs, he's got 2 active abilities. Rouse is the first one. It costs 3, 6-inch range, target 4 and gains 2 energy. That's pretty useful, I reckon. If he does it on Gloom, Gloom can cost atrophy twice. If he does it on Boris, Boris can summon 2 bunnies rather than 1, or he can summon a Jackalope, which costs 4. And I'll obviously get to talk about Boris in a bit, and I'll probably mention Chubbs quite a lot because he's more of a supporty character, where I'll talk about the other ones too. So we can also make sure that Hoff has more energy to hit stuff with, or Mr. Toodle has more energy to heal if he's run out of healing energy, and things like that. Got Misdirection, costs 4. That's his entire energy allowance because he's got 6 health and 4 energy. But move target enemy model 3 inches. So he can, and I think that's really, really useful. I played a game last night with Jack, and I played a troop that had quite a lot of movement and sort of board control shenanigans, and it made me realise just how useful that is. Being able to move a model off a moonstone, for example, or into combat with a giant, if they're trying to stay away, and that kind of thing. I think that Misdirection is really potentially really quite useful. He's got 2 arcane abilities. Shoot Bow, costs 3, but it's got a 10-inch range, it's X+1 piercing. And the catastrophe is that it can't be used for the remainder of the game, but it doesn't cause any wounds, so if you're using it late on in the game, you can risk those catastrophes. And he can't shoot it while he's engaged, but it's a pretty good standard shooty attack, I think. And if he's playing alongside Brother Daniel, who can give him an extra energy, or say Tabby, the librarian, who can move energy around because they're both Commonwealth as well, he could end up being able to fire that twice. And being able to fire a 10-inch range weapon with X+1 piercing twice is quite scary. And doesn't have to reload or anything, that's why it costs 3. What I found when I used him, what that's most useful for, is chipping wounds off like the fire spitter, because he can stand 10 inches away from the fire spitter, shoot him with his bow, and then move away, and actually be out of range of the fire spitter's sort of move and shooting ability, which is really good. So he can cause damage without the threat of being hit in return. Next ability is a standard healing spell, costs 2, 8-inch range, heals X+1 wounds, Catastrophe suffers 2 wounds. That's a very standard healing spell. As I said, his health, he's got 6 health with 4 energy. His upgrade's on low guard. Deals none. Reduced damage suffered by -1. And the end cell effect is quite fun. Choose a character you control, move the enemy up to 4 inches directly towards that character. The enemy cannot target that character with an action until the end of the turn. So you can really mess someone up. It's just move an enemy within 4 inches towards a character. There's no range for that character, so you can move them towards a character who's miles away. It's just to get them out of combat. But they can't target that one. If you can move them within 4 inches into a character who's nearby and say in combat, they then can't hit them. So then they might find that they've lost a lot of the rest of their energy. So that's a really fun defensive signature move. So Chubbs, I would say he's a supporty character, but obviously because he's got a heal and the rouse abilities. But shoot bow is also useful for just picking off wounds off people. Good late turn against not so much against fairies because he's only arcane 3, but good against goblins and humans potentially, and again not so much gnomes because their energy's all low down, but good against goblins and humans, I would say, because if you can pick off a couple of wounds late turn, then they're coming back with less wounds. And because it's got a 10-inch range, he's not a threat, particularly of anyone else, apart from a few of the gnomes that have particularly long-range abilities. So let's move on to Gloom, who's a Fallen Wizard. Melee 2, which is very standard for a wizard, range 1, arcane 4, evade 0. He's also a weakling, so standard -1 damage and half actions cost +1 energy. He's also slow. He's supposed to be this kind of slightly wizened Fallen Wizard. The artwork shows his face is quite covered, which is quite cool. And he's holding like a lantern, which there's a reason why he's holding a lantern, which we'll get to in a bit. He's got a gnarled staff, which is like other passive ability, which is +1 impact damage. So that will counteract the weakling if you need it. So he could potentially finish someone off if he needs to. But his main things are his arcane and active abilities. So his active ability is called Whisper to the Wild Things. It only costs 1. 8-inch range, nice and long, and he can move a target animal 2 inches. So he works well with the jackalope and he works well with Boris. Then you end up with more animals wandering around. And that I think is really useful, especially if you've got the jackalope or a bunny who's maybe holding a moonstone and you want to get them out of combat. He can move them to 2 inches so they can probably be out of combat. Then they can jog and use ND to step to get further away to protect that moonstone. Or on the flip side, you might want to move the jackalope further in so he can then get into combat in his turn. The same with a murder bunny. Plenty of uses with that, I think. And there's a couple of other creatures. So the beast is also an animal. So he could also move the beast further up or further away, which is also obviously useful. So it's obviously situational, as a lot of abilities are, but it's one of those abilities that you might find that one time that you do use it well, it could be game changing. He's got 2 arcane abilities, and I'll start with the sort of simpler one, I would say, which is Atrophy. Cost 3, 6-inch range, target suffers 2x magical damage. So potentially really high damage output. Now, as standard, he can only cast it once because he's got 4 energy. But obviously, there are ways to give him extra energy. So although he doesn't have an ability that costs more than his energy allowance, he can be given more, can't he? So Brother Daniel typically can give him 1 more, so he'd be on 5. Kavanagh could give him 2 more. You can give him 2 more or 1 more. Can't remember what his ability is now. But there's a few people that can give him the extra energy, so he could potentially cast it twice. Suffering 2 lots of 2x magical damage is pretty horrible. In one of the games that I used him, he managed to kill... He didn't do very well. He fired it at the fire spitter, and only did, I think, a couple of damage because I only got 1, which wasn't great. But he did then, which basically won me the game, is he managed to cast it on the vicious midget, and I drew a 3, and I murdered it in one go. And he dropped 2 moonstones, and it won me the game. So he is very good and very scary against people like the vicious midget, because, or someone like the fire spitter. Anyone who's got minuses to normal non-magical damage, Gloom is quite scary because his atrophy will just go straight through their armor. So I like, it's hard to get there obviously because he's slow. He can move, so Shadow Walk is his other ability. That's the idea with lanterns, it creates a shadow which he then kind of jumps into, which it costs 2. And it's placed this model within 2x. So they're looking for reds. It's arcane 4. There's a good chance he'll get a red. He might be able to move just 2, but he might be able to move 6. And it's within that, so you can move his base from front to back as well. So he has got some potential, really good movement shenanigans, and particularly good if he's carrying a moonstone, for example, to just get him out of there to cast Shadow Walk. And obviously it's a way of getting him out of combat as well. Now the catastrophe for that is that the resisting player may place this model within 6, which is a bit horrible, so he could put him then right in the middle of his combat guys or something. But, you know, catastrophes aren't usually supposed to be good. I like Shadow Walk. I think it's really useful. I used it quite a lot with him to get him moving up the board a little bit or moving behind cover. Because, you can avoid cover with it. You can just move straight through an obstacle with Shadow Walk. And I also feel like, again, if playing with someone like Brother Daniel, you could give Gloom 1 extra energy. He's on 5, so he can do Shadow Walk and Atrophy. So he can do his jog, cast Shadow Walk, get a bit closer, then cast Atrophy as well. So it gives him a significantly additional threat range to hurt someone with. I think what I've learned the more I play Moonstone is that movement abilities, ways of controlling either your own movement more or your opposition's movement, is really, really powerful, because in the end you're trying to get moonstones. And if you can keep the opposition away from the moonstones by moving them around, or you've got more movement to get to the harder to reach moonstones, for example, then you're going to win the game. And for example, with Gloom, he was in a game I played with him, I did Shadow Walk to make him appear in the middle of like a bog or pond terrain that we had. And normally you'd have to step to get to it. He did it in 1 spell. I think that's really good. And again, he could do it to jump into a building that's maybe a bit further away, so he doesn't have to jog up to a building, spend 2 to traverse and go through. He could just jump into it. It's place him anywhere within 2x. So I really like the movement shenanigans in this well, actually in Leshavult in particular, but also with Gloom in particular, that those movement things I think are really useful. And like with Chubbs, being able to move enemy models around. If you've got Chubbs moving the enemy, Gloom moving himself, I just think that's and Lubar potentially bringing people in with Haul in. Those movement things can really give you a lot of board control, and that's really key in Moonstone. I think, especially if you have a close Moonstone drop, being able to move them away from them is really useful. So he's got 7 health, 4 energy. His signature is on low guard. I think it's the same. I can't remember who it's the same as. He's got the same signature as someone else called Slip into the Shadows. Deals none, obviously, because it's a low guard, and you place this model within 4. So it's a way of just making him safe, placing him 4 inches away. Again, within 4, so that's front to back of base if you want it to be. So it can help him get out of combat, which is really useful. I really like Gloom. Love the model as well. Slightly creepy, but I think it works really well. The artwork that we worked on together, I really like it. I think what we're going to find is that moving forward, when all these new models are out, when the Leshavult are out, and the new Commonwealth and Dominion models are coming out this year, it's going to be really hard to build troops because there's so many cool models. I'll say at the moment, Jack Gloom is not overpowered. I think he's about right. I wouldn't change anything about him or Chubbs. The way I've played both of them, I think they're both good. So the last one on the wild things is the Jackalope, which is a big animal. It's a big bunny with horns, which is cool by itself. So he's got melee 3, again fairly sort of standard. Range 1, arcane 0, evade +1. Because it's a big model, really big. Passive abilities, he's got razor sharp antlers. Character deals piercing damage, is +2, so that's pretty good. Standard +2 piercing, and most attacking abilities have piercing. I think I can't remember now off the top of my head, which is annoying. Pretty sure that Falling Swing, Thrust, and Rising Attack all have piercing on, but I can't entirely remember now. So, but he can do +2 with most of his attacking cards. Obviously not with Sweeping Cut. He's then got Burrowing Claws, so the first time each turn this character performs a harvest action, you may reduce the death value by 2 instead of 1. Really useful. I get that in mind the game that I played most recently with Jackalope, made he dug up a Moonstone much quicker, which is just, anything that makes you dig up Moonstones better is just good. Then, next one is Hippity. You may move freely over intervening obstacles and models during drag actions, provided bases do not overlap at the end. So a bit like Fly from Fairies, you can just jump over people and stuff, which is good. Which also means that, because one thing that I didn't realise for a while until I spoke to Tom about it, is that obstacles includes doors. So you can move freely through a door. And Fairy can do the same, they can move freely through doors and things. I think that's right. Tom will have to correct me if I got that wrong. So after Hippity is Hop, Hippity Hop. So Hop costs 2, and you move this model 4 inches, and you may move freely over obstacles and terrain at the same time, which is really good. And I found that's really useful, particularly if he's carrying a Moonstone, because then if he's reduced to just 2-inch move, but you can still play Hop, which is an active ability, not an arcane. Still got a 6-inch move, which is really powerful. And again, in the game I played with him, he got drawn out to the side a little. I think could be she. I'll use it. Got drawn out a little bit because it picked up a Moonstone slightly away from the centre of the board. But it did mean that by turn 4, it was right in the middle of the board again, because he got all the extra movement just to get there. And that was without using Gloom to, say, move him another 2 inches. Signature move is Rising Attack. It's called Gore. Pretty good. Extra damage. It's piercing, so damage is 2, 2, 2, 3, 2. So it does quite a lot of damage, and it will even do damage against a low guard, which is good. So it says piercing. Obviously, those aren't 2, 2, 2, 3, 2. That's actually 4, 4, 4, 5, 4 because of the +2 piercing. And it moves the enemy model 1 inch away. So that's always tricky with that one, isn't it? Because you might want to kill them. But it's a good damage dealing. If you're doubling it, it's suddenly 6 damage or 8 damage that you're doing, which I mean, if you get it against a sweeping cut, it's probably going to kill them because it's doing 8 damage. 10 health with 3 energy and a 40 mil base. So quite resilient in terms of having a lot of health. Obviously no damage resistance buffs at all. So what I found with Jackalope is when I played him recently, Doug managed to get into combat and got into combat having both charged and having raiding party from Dominion, and I had ninja reactions thankfully, so I didn't suffer any, but I suffered 9 damage in one go against Doug, which was quite unpleasant. So it will die if you're not careful, but at the same time will do damage in return. So it's a fairly solid attacking character, I would say. It's quite hard to think about attacking character because it's not holding a sword or a big weapon or anything. It's big and it can hit stuff hard. So I do like it. I've used it well in both times, I would say. I've used it well. In the first game I played with it, it died really quickly because I charged out in the middle of the board and it got killed by long range gnome fire. So I probably wouldn't take it against gnomes actually, because it's just going to die really quickly early on with a +1 evade. With like quarrels hitting it, it's just going to go down really quickly. So I potentially wouldn't use it against that. Now, of course, what you can do is if you're using Boris, is you can summon a Jackalope, which we'll get to in a minute. So in terms of how those 3 might then interact with the other fawns and Leshavult, Gloom likes to be near a Jackalope or other animals because he can move animals around. Apart from that, he's fairly standard, so he's simple. And same with the Jackalope. Ideally, you probably want Jackalope with Gloom. Also, Jackalope, of course, can go with Joanna, who can benefit from animals being nearby, so that's always a bonus to think about too. And if you've got Joanna and a Jackalope next to each other and she's suffering less damage because it's an animal, that's pretty horrible because she's also really good in combat. Chubbs wants to be with Fawns really because of Rouse. But I think Chubbs would probably still be good in a normal list. He still basically can shoot people and heal, so that's still good, whatever. And they all work well with the other Fawns as well because they offer something the other Fawns don't have. Mr. Toodle's got healing. Like I said, sort of standard cleric-y character, but they will work well with other Fawns. They will work well within other Commonwealth and Leshavult lists as well, I think. Chubbs is particularly useful with Boris, I would say, because you can give Boris the extra energy to cast Summon Jackalope, which costs 4, had 2 Murder Bunnies. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's still early days with these ones. They haven't been out too long. I've only played 2 or 3 games with them. It's hard to say what else they can sort of do, but Gloom, I think, would obviously quite like to be near someone like Braddock, so he can cast his spells with him sort of impunity. Jackalope, well, Jackalope is quite... The good thing about Jackalope is it will work quite well even completely separately from anyone else. Like, it's quite happy to be near Gloom. But it doesn't benefit from any fawn abilities or any cultist abilities or anything like that. So it's quite happy by itself, which is often quite useful. When you do a Moonstone drop, you get one that fires off the side away from anyone else, and the Jackalope's a good one to go for that. Because even if that's all it does, is just go and get that Moonstone and then gradually work its way in, it's probably going to hold on to it because it's got 10 health. And, you know, people are going to be scared of going after it because it can hit quite hard. So good for that. Definitely good for that. Let's go on to the last one, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more generally than we need to. So the last one is Boris, the bunny summoner, a bit of the poster child, I would say, for the Leshavult Kickstarter. He's quite a lot of fun, as you can imagine, being called Boris the bunny summoner. Melee 2, so low melee. He's a fawn wizard, so you don't expect a high melee on a wizard. Range 2, though, because he's holding a big shepherding crook. Arcane 4, so not too high, interestingly, and there's a reason why it's not 5. Evade 0. So, passive abilities first. Got a Shepherd's Crook. If it deals slicing or piercing, reduce damage to nothing. If it deals impact, it's +1. So he can do a bit of extra damage if he wants to, which is good. Herding. If his character deals melee damage to an animal, you may choose to reduce damage to nothing and move that animal X where X damage you would have dealt. Not quite sure what that's for. I mean, you can attack your own people, so you could use it to move a bunny up the board a little bit. If you've placed a murder bunny and then you want to move it a bit further, you could potentially do that. Or a jackalope, for example, because you can. I think you can attack your own people. I've said that now. I'm not even sure you can. You might not attack your own people, in which case that would work. But I'm not. Now I've said that, I'm not sure if it does, and Tom will have to correct me on that. And last of all, shabby old coat, reduced magical and slicing damage by -1. So that's pretty useful. Good against fairies to have -1 magical, and slicing is always useful anyway. So it makes them a little bit more resilient. But then really boils it down to two other things. I mean, those three are just things that are useful for defending himself and keeping him alive a bit longer, or little things. But really, he is about the two arcane abilities, which is summon the murder bunny and summon the jackalope. So summon murder bunny costs 2, and he has 3 energy. And it's cast on any 2, green, blue, or red 2, and you place a murder bunny within 3 inches. It does say 6 on the card I got in front of me, but I know we've reduced it to 3 from playtesting. It gains 3 energy, is now considered part of your troop. I'm going to activate this turn as normal. And the catastrophe is it suffers 3 wounds. It suffers 3 wounds. So 3 wounds is quite hard on him actually, because he's only got 8 health. If you do suffer catastrophe from it, it's not great. So normally he'd, in a standard list, I guess, for want of a better word, he'd only be able to summon 1. But all it takes is Brother Daniel near him at the beginning of the turn. He can give him the extra energy, so he could summon 2 murder bunnies. And we'll get on to murder bunnies in a bit, but that's really useful. Summoning murder bunnies is definitely his most powerful and most useful ability, because they are really useful. I'll talk about his last thing, which is summon the jackalope. You can only do it if there's no jackalope in play, so you can't already have a jackalope and summon another one, which is obviously really important. 2 jackalopes on the board would be ridiculous. Now to cast it, it's cast on any 3. He suffers 3 wounds, and then you can place a jackalope within 3. It gains 3 energy, and now considered a normal part of the troop, same as normal. So you can just summon the jackalope, which is really good. But he does suffer 3 wounds as a result. The catastrophe is that he suffers 3 wounds still, and you can place a murder bunny instead. So even if you fail it and suffer the catastrophe, he still gets to summon a bunny. Now I think if I was the opponent and I just failed it as normal, then I probably wouldn't play the catastrophe. I'd rather they didn't summon the murder bunny. I'd rather summon nothing. So personally, if it was me, I wouldn't play the catastrophe against this as the opponent. What you can do, of course, when you get dealt your hand, say 4 cards, and you haven't got any 3s, but you have got a catastrophe, it would be tempting to just cast the catastrophe and get a murder bunny anyway, even though you suffer 3 wounds, because at least you're getting something. I've only tried to summon jackalope once and failed, and I think I summoned a murder bunny instead, but I think I might have done nothing because I didn't want to suffer any wounds. It is quite hard to summon the jackalope, which it should be. He needs extra energy for a start, because it costs 4, he only starts with 3. Daniel can help him with that. Having a few other cats can help him get that. Chubbs can give him the extra energy. Tabby can give him extra energy, so he can get the extra energy. Summon the jackalope, but he's only arcane 4, and he needs 3s to do it. There's a good chance he's not going to get any 3s, and it uses up all his energy. So if you fail it and don't even summon the murder bunny, that's just him done, and it's someone else's ability with giving him energy that's not been used. So it is a bit of a risk. I personally prefer to just summon more murder bunnies because they're just more reliable, and I'm not one necessarily taking that risk too often, because I also think the murder bunnies are pretty useful as they are. But if you do get off and you get a jackalope, that is pretty awesome, because as we discussed earlier, the jackalope is good. He's a dangerous character. So his signature move is on thrust. It does impact damage, so he gets that +1 from Shepherd's Crook. Standard kind of damagey stuff. It's not so good against, doesn't do as much damage, but it'll do obviously 2. So high guard, it'll deal 1 damage. Falling swing, thrust, it'll deal 2. Rise attack and low guard, it'll deal 2. Because of the +1. But this attack deals +1 for each animal within 4, which is quite good actually. If you summoned a couple of bunnies and there's a jackalope nearby, for example, suddenly he's +4 damage with that, which is a bit horrible really, because you get +1 from the impact and plus for the animals. That's quite scary. So he could end up being a bit of a melee beast, Actually, if he manages to get thrust off, obviously. He's only melee 2, so there's a good chance that he won't get it off. I do like Boris a lot. It's a lot of fun to play with. Quite infuriating for your opponent summoning murder bunnies. At the moment, he's possibly a little bit overpowered, mainly because the murder bunnies are actually quite good. But I'll cover the murder bunnies in a second. But he is still very much in playtesting, so I've seen a lot of comments from our videos and on the Kickstarter page about him being overpowered. And people need to remember that he is very much in playtest, as all his characters are. They're in playtesting, they're not finished yet. There is still work to be done. I've used him a couple of times. I know that Tom's used him, I think. He has been used, and we are looking at his abilities and working out to make sure that he is not so overpowered. Because one thing that I know Tom has said before, and I completely agree with myself, what you don't want from what we don't want from Moonstone, what he doesn't want from Moonstone, you don't want auto includes. You have to think about who you're going to take. The exception to that, obviously, is the healers. You always want at least a healer in your troop. But apart from that, we don't want to see those auto include troops. And as Moonstone hopefully becomes more of a competitive game as well, we'll see more tournaments. What we don't want to see in those tournaments is just the same troops being brought every time. We want someone to bring some humans, someone to bring a mixture of humans and gnomes, someone to bring some fairies and goblins, someone to bring a rogue build, someone to bring what Tom calls a pacifist build, which is the one I used a bit last night. Someone to build what's called a noble build, which is where you have sort of young Jack and maybe Joanna and Fancy Hat, and then you might bring Gotchgut, and there's another giant that's got the same bodyguard ability called Brunhilde. Bringing those as well and just really tanking it. So you really tanky list. You need to stick a healer in there just to make sure. We want to see those varieties of lists where they do well against some and not so well against others, but there's that variety. So please remember that everything is in playtesting at the moment. So we've mentioned about something murder bunnies. Let's talk about I'll talk about it. Murder bunnies. So they've got no signature move at all. Melee 3, range 1, arcane 0, evade -1. That's all kind of standard, I think. They're little bunnies, they're going to be evade -1. At the moment it says that they're just Leshavult, but I think that will change to Commonwealth as well, because they're working with Boris, but that's just a little thing. Summoned being, you can't choose it for a troop, so you have to be summoned. Breeding like rabbits, another passive ability. All abilities are passive, actually, breeding like rabbits. Not unique, you can have duplicates, but you can only have 3. We've changed that, so we can only have 3. I never actually summoned more than 3, but if you could have 5, it'd be ridiculous. For example, Weakling, so it reduces melee damage by -1, harvest cost +1. It's got Razor Incisors. Character plays rising attack, it does +2 damage. That's pretty good. That counteracts the Weakling and still does +1. And like the Thackle, it has Hippity, so it can move freely over intervening obstacles and models during jog actions. 5 health, 3 energy. And they're pretty good. They do die very, very quickly because they have no defensive buffs whatsoever. They are very useful. I think there's a possibility that they might need a bit of a nerf, but they are really good at the moment. They can do a decent amount of damage with the +2, and they can kind of be annoying. You can swamp people with them. You can crowd moonstones with them. You can block off lines of fire with them, which I've done before. Summon 2 directly in front of a character and completely blocked off the fire splitter, so they had to hit a murder bunny rather than me. They use up activations, which is really useful. That's the thing I think that might need to change. We'll see what happens, but because if you have 2 or 3 on the board, for example, you just activate each of those first. Then you can use your healer later on with impunity. You can use your bigger damage dealers, and your opponent can't do much about it. So they are really good, but we'll see if they need any changing. And same with Boris. So overall, those 5 characters, the last of Leshavult that we've got to cover, they're fun to use. I enjoyed the game I used them in. Like I said, still in play testing. I don't think the Jackalope, Gloom, or Chubbs need much changing personally. I like them as they are. I wouldn't change much. The only one that still needs a bit of looking at is Boris. But he's quite a complicated one. He's the only one that can summon stuff, so it's a very new... well, not so much for Tom. He's obviously known it for a while, but for most Moonstone players, being able to summon new characters to the board is a very new feature for this Leshavult, so something we've all got to learn how to deal with. There are ways to combat it. One, kill Boris. Is always a starter. So go after Boris particularly first, which there's ways of doing that. You can to a certain extent ignore the murder bunnies, or wait till them to attack you and then just hit them back, because they can't do a huge amount of damage. They're quite weak. They're not too easy to ignore. We'll see what happens with them. I think the murder bunnies are the thing that need possibly a bit of looking at. But the rest of them I think work really well. Well, Boris works really well. He just very much still early playtesting days with Boris. I hope people find that interesting and potentially useful. All these cards are available just on the website for people to look at as well and play yourselves and see how you feel. I think they all work well with the other Leshavult as well. One, because they don't necessarily require the extra energy, particularly Gloom, Jackalope and Chubs. They can activate freely without having to worry about getting that extra energy to cast those powerful abilities. But they have quite standard useful spells, and the movement shenanigans I think are really useful. Gloom, Jackalope and Chubs all have extra movement stuff they can do. Boris does in the sense that he can summon a bunny which can then move, so they all have board control abilities which are really useful. And Lubar can obviously hit stuff quite hard. It'll be interesting to see how they get used going forwards and how often the Thorns get used. I really like the concept of the Thorns and I hope they get used well. Because I also think they'll mix well within standard Commonwealth lists as well. I think you could see Gloom, Jackalope and Chubs going together with some humans and some gnomes. That'd be good. And some giants and things too, so it could be interesting to see how people use these characters going forwards. Okay, I'll leave it there, I think. I hope you enjoyed listening to that. Don't know what my next one's going to be about, because I never do. I don't really have a particular plan for this podcast, I just like doing it. But we'll continue playtesting. I would check out a recent battle report on the Olde Battle Reps channel I have with Jack, where I use all of these characters, all 5 of them, and you'll be able to see them on the tabletop, how I used them. I think I used them fairly well in that, I think I did. So best to check out that as well to see how they get used. Okay, thanks a lot for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.